This is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast, where CEOs, senior leaders, and C-suite executives share their advice. It's 6 questions in 9 minutes because the best leaders know how to share their ideas concisely and quickly. Let's jump right in. Question number 1. In a few sentences, tell me who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is William Coburn. I am currently the CEO of a transdisciplinary think tank. And so I recently joined on about a few months ago after working in information technologies. So we look at transdisciplinary research and how we can promote awareness about raising our own level of consciousness on an individual basis, but then also on a collective level, and let that manifest in our world so that we can be more united and actually work towards a utopian future with all these exponential and converging technologies that provide a lot of possibility. But if we don't approach it with an open mindset, looking for solutions rather than being closed-minded, then that creates a lot of alternate futures that could be potentially disruptive and bad for humanity. So we try to bridge that gap for people and for the world, for new ideas to come together.
That's great. And kind of what I'm hearing too is it's almost like the unity is necessary from the technology perspective in order to really serve mankind in the way it was probably ultimately intended.
Exactly. I mean, it's like people are figuring out today that the spirit is not meant to live in this crazy consumerist world where we're seeing people with, the level of statistics around depression and anxiety and people not happy in the workplace and not complacent even with their interpersonal relationships is just showing that there has to be some kind of change take place. And when we see technology is really just an extension of who we are, and it's kind of built out as like a tool that we can use to enhance us. So that's why it's so important that we look at what the possibilities are to shape that for future in which we can coexist and co-create together rather than segregate, push, lead to more poverty, and kind of that major wealth distribution issue that we're seeing. And we can kind of bring more balance and power back to people in kind of a decentralized, symbiotic ecosystem of economies, rather than just these different authoritarian and kind of regulated governments that are seen by just a collective or select group of people who have power, so to say, and not putting that say back in the people, and kind of taking away the ability, not taking away again, but opening up to a new future where people aren't projecting out their own levels of unconscious onto the world, because we project onto other people. But if we have and we know what our values are together, that we want to create a happy future for ourselves and future generations, then we can let more automation and be okay with technology kind of coming in on the second hand and running other things for us. So kind of co-creating, being open to the idea that machines will play a large role in our lives, and how that can be for beneficial. So like therapy, and help us and kind of be there on our side. And when our little shadow or alter ego is talking to us and kind of telling us maybe we're not saying the right thing, or maybe we're not happy about our situation, and kind of bring us back into place, and then connect us to the people that matter and have discussions that are, worthwhile.
So with that in mind, and kind of thinking through that kind of, technology lens, I'd be curious what your perspective is on the best thing about leading people then kind of in this time. What's the best thing about leading people from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, people are, it's about opening a space. So I think first of all is showing people that limits that are put up are really put up within themselves. So I think from a leader's perspective is you don't want to be imposing. Me personally, I don't try to impose beliefs, or other great leaders don't impose what they are, but they say that there's a broader vision at hand, and that when we come together in arms and work for a purpose greater than ourselves, that's what really inspires us. When we hear stories about people in the past saying that they're working for something greater, because it's giving them that feeling of satisfaction, because that kind of that egoic self-esteem that we work up in ourselves, and just these little dopamine rushes and instant gratifications, that's very commonplace now, especially in like the younger generation in 20s and 30s, who are not really looking for greater purpose almost. It's about letting people find that purpose within themselves so that they can inspire others and lead teams as well. And that's kind of just like this domino effect that can kind of build up into a strong collective team or ecosystem of people that can trust each other.
Trust being the key piece there for sure.
Yeah.
I often hear from other leaders that business would be great if it weren't for that pesky people part. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? You might agree in some ways, you know.
No, I mean, pesky people, I think, are just not aligned with their own intentions that they set out, and so they're finding conflict in their life and in the workplace that is then creating tension within other people. So we want to look for spaces in which we can talk openly about ideas, not feel judged about what we're saying. But that being said, if you're in a group of people, let's say like a meeting, brainstorming about new ideas for a product, and there's 15 people in the room, but then there's one person, whether this is a virtual call or in person, who's kind of maybe not paying attention, or maybe they're pulling some of the energy down in that sense. That's where people get so lost in the mind. So a lot of what we look at is states of consciousness again, and this is identifying to false, illusory ideas of who we are almost. So it's really coming back to this present moment and coming back to ourselves, really, and the nature of who we are and how we see ourselves in the world, rather than just worrying about other people and worrying about the situation, rather than seeing how we're telling ourselves what the situation is. Because a lot of the times the stories we tell ourselves are the actual reality of what it is, you know, and it's
Exactly.
like, so I think it's about opening, and some people aren't meant to be a part of certain groups, and it's like they'll find that out for themselves, or it just, some things aren't meant for some people, because I think everyone has their own purpose and everyone has their gifts and unique abilities. And I think everyone is truly a genius in their own right, that each person has such an individual perspective that no one else has. That it just has to be introduced in the right manner that works in the right type of ecosystem. So each person has to feel welcome and trusted into that ecosystem again. So I think it comes back to that trust thing again, of feeling like what they're saying is worthwhile, or
yeah. What other successful business leaders like yourself should be on the podcast?
Well, I at first I'd have to say Haas Sadeghi, absolutely. He recently just joined on as our board advisors, and he's a relational alchemist. Osin Akachi, I would absolutely, Kumakalu. I'd say Dr. Michael Fisher from Fearology Institute up in Toronto, Canada. He's a brilliant philosopher. Aubrey de Grey, if you're interested in biotech and longevity, he's with the SENS Foundation, and they're actually looking to reverse aging, which is fascinating technologies.
It's so crazy, all the stuff that's even happening right underneath our noses that most of us don't even think about half the time. That's awesome. All right, question 5. In 1 minute, what piece of advice about communication would you give to other leaders?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to opening up that space within ourselves first, that we don't actually care about. We're not trying to project onto other people those beliefs that we have, but rather open up that space again for them to be open and creative. Because creativity, you can't be creative and you can't be successful without being okay with failing. And like, failure is part of the process. And it's like, failing is actually such a good and healthy thing. But it's again how you view it not being a failure. Rather, it's just almost getting there. It's like you're trying to perfect the tune, and then you get to that tune, and then it just sounds great. And so I think but the environment where that you can play with that and see what works and what doesn't is the most important thing, because it's like the set and setting in which a person can act and feel involved and collaborate and express their ideas and express their emotions, because it's all kind of part of the system.
All right, magic question number 6. Tell us about your favorite boss or teacher who's really influenced you.
Well, I think my favorite teacher was back in high school. He was my AP statistics teacher, and the way he taught, and so we always had like a good bond, but the way he taught it would always challenge me because it would he would speak to it so from explanatory and empirical terms where he would never like kind of give the context around the situation, because in general statistics studies, like reading from a introductory level textbook, it's just looking at situations and like defining the p-value, the explanatory variables, and kind of breaking that into subsets, but it didn't really show the context of where those methods can be looked at within it didn't really look at the philosophy of it. And that's where I've always been interested in philosophy and very interested in consciousness and the mind and how we perceive things. And so that's why I did well in the course actually, but it was hard for me to resonate with just the broad teaching and just saying that you have to learn these ways to approach it in such a manner. Because that's I think was what the issue is with specialty in the world today. And Buckminster Fuller talks about this in the world, and what we're leading to here in the next 10, 15 years is where it's not going to be specialized fields. Everything is going to be automated. So this is where we really have to come back to our creativity, and come back to the sense of who we are so that we can be authentic. Because communication, creativity, and openness are going to be like key qualities going into the future, because we will be creating that future, right? It's like that machine that's there for us. And we're here together in this changing world, but we have to be looking for the kind of changes that we want to see together. And so, yeah, he pricked at my mind, but he was really open to it. And so we've had a great relationship since. And so he's been a great friend and a mentor to me since high school.
That's cool that you could carry him forward that way in other parts of your life and stuff like that.
Yes, it was great.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate having you here. How can people find you if they want to reach out and say hi or learn more about your organization?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. You can check me out on LinkedIn, on TAFFD, which is just TAFFDS.org, or my Facebook page, Instagram, just Will Coburn. I'm happy to talk about all things consciousness, futurism, transhumanism, all the above. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, well, we so appreciate your perspective and especially the time that you gave. Excuse me. This is Stacey McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast. For more ideas and insights, please do go check us out at www.consilioteam.com. We look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.
Bye.